The United Kingdom and Ukraine have signed a deal to provide £2.6 billion in loans towards Ukraine's defence. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy flew directly to London after his now infamous and explosive meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office yesterday. Sky News Washington correspondent Annalise Nielsen joins us live now. Annalise, what does all this mean for the minerals deal?
Well, it looks like the clear message from Zelenskyy is if the Americans don't want to support his country fighting this war against Russia in the way that he and the Ukrainian people want, he will find that support elsewhere. So to leave directly from the United States, to then fly directly to London, meet with Keir Starmer, who himself met with Donald Trump this week. And now we've just had this line about the £2.6 billion of loan support for Ukraine coming through. We're waiting for details about exactly what that means for the European support, but this is a clear signal that they think they can go it alone. And Zelenskyy was quite angry about having to sign off the rights to profits from these minerals in Ukraine to continue to enjoy US support. From the US side, this is exactly what they wanted. This was the very clear message from JD Vance when he spoke in Munich at the Security Summit, saying that Europe needed to do more to support Ukraine, given it was on their front doorstep and very far away from the United States. Wherever you stand on that kind of protectionist outlook in the world, what we are seeing is just a complete realignment here with the US priorities, in that they're being accused of stepping closer to Russia. From the US perspective, from everyone in the Trump administration who's spoken out since this meeting, they've said that they're not stepping closer to Russia, they're simply stepping back and taking themselves out of the equation and putting less money into Ukraine. And they're also calling on Europeans to be doing more to support their own energy interests, because that's been a key part of all this as well. But before I get too off the topic, what we are talking about here is an historic meeting again, with Zelenskyy meeting with Keir Starmer. He's set to meet with King Charles tomorrow, and he was much more conciliatory in meeting with the British today. He was greeted with a hug by Keir Starmer and that all-important thank you to open their meeting.
I want to thank you, people of the United Kingdom, such big support from the very beginning of this war. Thank you, your team. And I'm very happy that His Majesty the King accepted my meeting tomorrow, and I'm thankful that you organized such a great summit for tomorrow. And we are very happy in Ukraine that we have such strategic partners.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio has granted an interview yesterday after this fiery meeting in the Oval Office, and he's a really interesting perspective in all this. He has spoken positively about the support for Ukraine when he himself was running for president. He's been critical of Donald Trump in the past, but done a 180 on that to join the admin and support Trump's approach to foreign policy. He's seen as a very well-respected, well-read, well-understood member of the international community. He was supported through Congress without any opposition. He's seen as being a very reasonable player. He was furious around how this meeting went in the Oval Office, and he said the consideration from the Ukrainians has been poorly handled. He's essentially given the perspective saying that this deal was done. They wanted to come and have this ceremony to sign off on it. And if they weren't happy with it, they should have just not come and let the teams continue to negotiate, because at the end of the day, what they want is to bring everyone to the negotiating table to bring this conflict to an end.
This agreement that was supposed to be signed today was supposed to be an agreement that binds America economically to Ukraine, which to me, as I've explained, and I think the president alluded to today, is a security guarantee in its own way, because we're involved. It's now us, it's our interests. That was all explained. That was all understood. And nonetheless, for the last 10 days, in every engagement we've had with the Ukrainians, there's been complications in getting that point across, including the public statements that President Zelenskyy has made.
And then to the point I was making just a short time ago, what we have seen is just this frustration of why the Ukrainians wanted to come to the White House in the first place. What the New York Post is reporting is that retired General Kellogg, who was who is the envoy for the US in Russia and Ukraine, who's been charged with doing a lot of this negotiating to bring this conflict to an end. When he met with Zelenskyy, he was frustrated with the pushback that he was getting from the Ukrainians, and the New York Post is reporting personally told Zelenskyy and his team to not go ahead with this meeting if they were coming with the same attitude that they had in private meetings, that he thought the two leaders weren't ready to have a meeting together and be on the same page, and that it would cause friction, which is exactly what we saw yesterday, and this is what we've heard again from the Secretary of State.
But they insisted on coming to D.C. This agreement could have been signed 5 days ago, but they insisted on coming to Washington, and there was should have been a very clear understanding. Don't come here and create a such scenario where you're going to start lecturing us about how diplomacy isn't going to work. President Zelenskyy took it in that direction, and it ended in a predictable outcome as a result. It's unfortunate. That wasn't supposed to be this way, but that's the path he chose, and I think, frankly, sends his country backwards in regards to achieving peace, which is what President Trump wants at the end of the day, is for this war to end.
So the question now is what happens next? It looks like between the US and Ukraine, not a lot. This could be something that now drags on for weeks, and the US may simply abandon its aspirations for these critical minerals in Ukraine. They may realize they're in a better negotiating position in a few weeks or months, or this may be something that the Russians want to offer them at some point to give access to if there is a deal done, because Ukraine still has a hell of a fight on its hands.
They certainly do. Thanks, Annalise. Appreciate that.